Hi, Rob Smythe here. In some other videos, I argued whether the statement God exists is a scientific statement, and I suggested that it was not, that in fact the statement God exists, since it cannot be refuted by any observation, is a non-scientific statement, that no test can be performed to test whether God exists or not. So the statement God exists being untestable might be a true statement, but it's a non-scientific statement. In another video, I showed why science prefers, in fact insists, on non-divine explanations for things, because a divine explanation for something is a dead end. You can't say because God made it that way, that will enable us to determine whether anything else happened or exists or anything, because it depends whether God made another thing, right? Some people have accused me, therefore, of arguing against God's existence, and I did no such thing. Just for fun, let's look at it from the other side. Let's look at a God explanation for something. For example, how about thunder? Let's say thunder is caused by the god Zeus on Mount Olympus throwing these thunderbolts and big crashes. Okay? I think there's other mythology too. Probably Thor was throwing those things too. But let's deal with, in general, that the idea that maybe thunder and lightning is caused by a god doing something. Okay, that's either true or false, isn't it? We don't need to discuss where that came from and why that arose in the past and so on. We'll just make the statement, there is a God hypothesis for lightning that's either true or false. Okay. Now, a little while later, after the God hypothesis was made by the Greeks, Benjamin Franklin was silly enough to fly a kite in a thunderstorm, and he could have electrocuted himself, and luckily he didn't. And he says, oh, lightning, that's just jumping of electrons from a negative cloud to the positive, etc., etc., etc. Now, in fact, I'm making this up a little bit because the concept of an electron wasn't discovered in Franklin's time, but you know what I mean. He comes up with a scientific explanation for lightning. And all of a sudden people say, oh, yes, that God hypothesis, how silly that was. Now we know what the real explanation is. Now, stop for a second. We said either the God explanation was true or it wasn't. Now, how can the truth of that depend on whether Benjamin Franklin was clever? In general, if some religious person wants to give a God explanation for anything, how can the truth of that depend on whether science has come up with an alternate explanation? I say this so that religious people should have a fallback position. And they shouldn't feel bad because science has come up with another explanation. They should feel good because it's so useful to have a non-God explanation. But they could still say, I believe the God explanation. And then stop there. Don't say, I believe the God explanation is the correct one, because they'll start giving reasons. Because as soon as they start to justify it, then that means the non-God people can bring up reasons to justify their position too. Right? A scientific explanation for something, all it is an explanation that is useful so that we can use it to get to other discoveries, whereas a God explanation is useless because it leads nowhere. So to the religious people, just state your case. God exists. And that's that.